There is a specific sound a multimillion-dollar biomedical research facility makes when it's running perfectly. It's not silence. It's a rhythmic, humming vibration. It's the sound of 86 ultra-low temperature freezers cycling on and off to protect 3 decades of tissue samples. It's the synchronized whir of centrifuges spinning at 15,000 RPMs and the soft, pneumatic hiss of the AC systems maintaining a positive pressure environment so that the pathogens inside the biosafety level 3 lab don't drift out into the hallway to meet the undergrads. For 12 years, I was the conductor of this symphony. I was the named principal investigator, PI, on the T32 institutional training grant and the massive U54 Center grant that served as the financial spine of this university's medical research department. In layman's terms, I brought in the money, I managed the science, and I ensured the federal government didn't shut us down. I'm Marisol. I don't shout, I don't slam doors, and I don't leave paper trails of incompetence. I'm a scientist. I deal in data, reproducible results, and hard facts. But the hardest fact I ever had to learn was that you can generate $150 million in revenue for an institution and still be treated like a recalcitrant teenager by a man whose only contribution to science was inheriting a jawline that looked good in alumni brochures. Dean Hargrave was that man. He was the kind of administrator who thought synergy was a strategy and that compliance was just a suggestion. I was sitting in my office, space cluttered with stacks of NIH grant applications and photos of the PhD students I'd shepherded into successful careers when the trouble started. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday was the day I ate a turkey sandwich at my desk while reviewing the budget variances for the animal colony. Marisol, Hargrave said, leaning against my doorframe. He never knocked. Knocking implies respect for the space on the other side. I noticed something on your shared calendar. Blocked out time, every day, noon to 1. I looked up from the spreadsheet. Yes, Dean, that's my lunch hour. It says Policy 601. That looks like a course code. It is, I said, taking off my reading glasses. I'm auditing a graduate course on federal science policy. It helps with the grant renewals to understand the changing legislative landscape regarding funding allocation. By the way, if you're into stories where competent women get pushed to the edge by corporate idiots and then burn the whole village down, do me a favor and hit subscribe button and maybe give this a like. It helps the algorithm find the other people who need a little vicarious revenge today. Thanks, you're the best. Hargrave frowned, a look that crinkled his perfectly tanned forehead. During the workday, during my unpaid lunch hour, I corrected him gently. I eat while I listen to the lecture. I'm back at my desk by 1:05 p.m., usually answering emails regarding the IRB protocols you asked me to expedite. He walked into the room then, closing the distance between us. It was a power move, designed to make me crane my neck up at him. It looks distracted, Marisol. We have the site visit for the renewal coming up in 6 months. That's $150 million on the table. I need your eyes on the ball, not in some textbook. My eyes are on the ball, Dean. The policy course is for the ball. Understanding how the NIH is shifting its priorities on diversity and inclusion is critical for the narrative of the renewal application. I'm doing this to ensure we get the money. He chuckled, a dry, patronizing sound that grated on my nerves like sand in a bearing. Leave the strategy to the leadership team, Marisol. You're the mechanic. Keep the engine running. You don't need to worry about where the car is going. The mechanic. I have a PhD in molecular biology and a master's in public health. I have authored 42 peer-reviewed papers. I have sat on federal review panels, but to Dean Hargrave, I was just the mechanic. The help. The person who tightened the screws so he could drive the Ferrari and wave to the donors. I'm not dropping the course, Hargrave, I said, keeping my voice level. It's my personal time. It doesn't impact my deliverables. It impacts the perception of your commitment, he shot back, his smile fading into a thin, hard line. When I look at my department chair, I want to see 110% focus, not someone trying to pad their resume for their next job. I'm not looking for next job, I lied. Well, it was a half-lie. I wasn't looking yet, but the writing was on the wall, written in invisible ink that only people like me could read. I'm trying to be better at this one. We'll see, he said, pushing off the doorframe. Just remember who signs the effort certification reports, Marisol. Perception is reality in this building. He walked away, leaving the scent of expensive cologne and cheap intimidation in his wake. I stared at the empty doorway for a long time. My heart wasn't pounding, my hands weren't shaking. I wasn't scared. I was calculating. See, Hargrave made the classic mistake of the arrogant mediator. He assumed that because I was quiet, I was compliant. He assumed that because I cared about the program, I would tolerate any abuse to protect it. He didn't understand that the mechanic knows exactly which bolt to remove to make the wheels fall off at 60 miles per hour. I turned back to my computer. I didn't close the spreadsheet. I opened a new folder on my private drive. I named it Documentation. If he wanted to talk about reality, I was going to start collecting some receipts. The hum of the freezers seemed to deepen, a low growl of agreement. The war hadn't started yet, but the first shot had just been fired, and he didn't even know he was the one in the crosshairs. The following week, the department held its monthly all-hands meeting. These gatherings were usually an hour of self-congratulatory slideshows where Hargrave took credit for the work of postdocs who were surviving on ramen noodles and caffeine. We gathered in the large auditorium, the air stale with recycled AC and suppressed groans. I sat in the third row, notebook open, pen poised. I was the model employee. I was focused. Hargrave took the podium, flashing that megawatt smile that probably secured more donations than our actual cancer research data. Great quarter, everyone, he boomed. Really spectacular effort across the board. He clicked to the next slide. It was a picture of Kyle, a junior principal investigator who had been with us for barely 2 years. Kyle was 29, wore vests over t-shirts, and had a habit of borrowing my lab technicians without asking. I want to give a special shout-out to Kyle, Hargrave said, beaming. Kyle has just launched his own biotech consulting firm on the side. It's this kind of entrepreneurial spirit that puts our university on the map, showing the industry that we have the brains and the business savvy. Stand up, Kyle. Kyle stood up, waving awkwardly. The room clapped politely. I didn't clap. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Kyle was running a for-profit business, during the work week, using, undoubtedly, university resources and reputation to bolster his personal brand, and he was being heralded as a visionary. I, on the other hand, was taking a lunch hour course to understand how to save the university's federal funding, and I was being threatened with insubordination. The hypocrisy wasn't just a bitter pill, it was a cyanide capsule. It signaled that this wasn't about time management or commitment. This was about control. Kyle was non-threatening to Hargrave because Kyle wanted to make money. Hargrave understood greed. He respected it. But me, I wanted knowledge. I wanted policy influence. I wanted to understand the machinery of power that men like Hargrave monopolized, and that terrified him. After the meeting, I went straight to my office. I didn't go to the lab to check on the cell cultures. I didn't go to the animal facility. I closed my door and logged into the university's email server. I started digging. Not for dirt on Kyle. He was irrelevant, just a symptom of the disease, but for the paper trail of my own existence. I downloaded every performance review from the last 12 years. Every single one was rated exemplary. I downloaded the email threads where I had successfully negotiated the budget cuts with the NIH grants management specialist. I downloaded the effort certification reports that proved I worked an average of 60 hours a week, well above the 40 I was paid for. Then I opened the NIH ERA Commons portal. This is the federal database where all grant information lives. It's the holy of holies for researchers. I checked my status. Role, PD/PI, Program Director/Principal Investigator. Status, active. Authority, full. I took a screenshot. Hargrave's assistant, woman named Deborah who looked perpetually exhausted, knocked on my door an hour later. She held a clipboard like a shield. Marisol, she whispered, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. He's asking for your calendar logs for the last 6 months. I looked at her. Deborah knew where the bodies were buried because she was usually the one forced to dig the holes. He wants to audit my time? She nodded, her eyes wide. He's trying to build a case, Marisol. He's talking to HR about time theft. Because of the class. Time theft, I repeated. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. I had missed my niece's baptism because I was here fixing a -80 freezer on a Sunday. I had spent my 10th wedding anniversary on a conference call with the FDA. Thanks, Deborah, I said softly. I appreciate you telling me. He's looking for a reason, she warned. He wants to bring in Dr. Sterling to run the renewal. Dr. Sterling was Hargrave's golf buddy, a man who hadn't run a wet lab since the late 90s. Putting Sterling in charge of a $150 million complex research grant was like asking a toddler to fly a Boeing 747 because he has a toy plane at home. Let him look, I said, turning back to my screens. Send him the logs, Deborah. Send him everything. Are you sure? Absolutely. Send him the raw data. I knew Hargrave. He was lazy. He wouldn't read the raw logs. He would glance at them, see blocks of time, and confirm his bias. He wouldn't notice that the emails sent at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and 4 a.m. far outweighed the 45 minutes I spent listening to a lecture on the Hatch Act while eating a salad. I wasn't just documenting my defense anymore. I was preparing the ammunition for a war he didn't realize would be nuclear. That afternoon, walked through the lab. My PhD students were pipetting solutions, the rhythmic click-clack of the micropipettes filling the room. They looked up, smiling, tired but inspired. They trusted me. They relied on me to keep the money flowing so they could get their degrees and change the world. A wave of nausea hit me. If Hargrave blew this up, they were the ones who would catch the shrapnel. I stopped by the desk of my lab manager, Sarah. She was the sergeant of this platoon. Sarah, I said quietly, make sure all the data on the local servers is backed up to the cloud tonight. Everything, every gel image, every sequencing file. She looked at me, sensing the shift in my tone. Is everything okay, boss? Just housekeeping, I said. We're due for a storm. She didn't ask questions. She just nodded and started typing. That's the difference between a leader and a boss. A boss demands obedience. A leader commands trust. Hargrave was about to learn that you can fire a person, but you can't fire the loyalty they've built. As I left the building that evening, the sun was setting over the campus. It looked beautiful, golden light hitting the brick buildings. It looked like a citadel of knowledge. But from where I stood, it looked like a house of cards, and Dean Hargrave was holding a match. 2 days later, the summons came. It wasn't a meeting invite. It was a calendar notification, titled Review of Duties with Hargrave and the Director of Human Resources, a woman named Brenda who had the personality of a wet cardigan. I walked into the conference room at 9 a.m. sharp. I didn't bring a notepad. I didn't bring a pen. I brought a single manila folder containing my time-stamped activity logs and the university's handbook on professional development. Hargrave sat at the head of the table, looking solemn. Brenda sat to his right, avoiding eye contact. Marisol, please have a seat, Hargrave said, gesturing to the chair furthest from him. I'm fine standing, I said. I have a transformation assay running that needs to be checked in 20 minutes. Hargrave sighed, the sound of a disappointed father. This is exactly what we need to discuss. Your prioritization. Brenda cleared her throat and slid a piece of paper across the mahogany table. Dr. Morneau, you're placing you on a performance improvement plan, effective immediately. The concerns raised regarding your time management and unauthorized educational pursuits during business hours have become untenable. I looked at the paper. It was a template. I could see where they had copy-pasted my name. Untenable, I repeated. I secured $12 million in bridge funding last month, Brenda. Is that untenable? Revenue generation does not excuse policy violations. Brenda recited, likely reading from a script in her head. The dean feels your focus is fractured. The PIP requires you to cease all non-work-related coursework immediately and submit a daily hour-by-hour log of your activities for the next 60 days. And if I refuse, I asked. Hargrave leaned forward. Then we will have to discuss your future at this institution, or lack thereof. This is about the lunch class? I asked, looking directly at him. Really? It's about insubordination, Marisol, Hargrave snapped, his mask slipping. I told you to drop it. You didn't. You challenged my authority on my floor. You think because you bring in the grants you're untouchable, but you're not. The university owns the grants. The university employs the staff. You are just an employee. The university owns the grants, I said slowly, testing the weight of the words. Is that your understanding, Dean? That the NIH awards money to the building, not the scientist? The award is to the institution, he said smugly. You are replaceable. There it was, the fatal error. He truly believed that the science happened by magic and that the millions of dollars flowing in were due to the prestigious letterhead, not the brain managing the complex web of federal regulations, animal welfare protocols, and scientific aims. I see, I said. So to clarify, drop the class or be fired. We prefer the term separated. Brenda added helpfully. I'll need to think about it, I said. You have 24 hours to sign the PIP, Hargrave said. Make the right choice, Marisol. Don't throw away a career over a hobby. I walked out. I didn't go to the lab, I went to the server room. Technically, I wasn't supposed to be in there without IT, but I had the master key because the temperature sensors for my samples were routed through there. I let myself in. The room was cold and loud with the roar of cooling fans. I wasn't there to sabotage. I'm not a vandal. I was there to protect myself. I initiated a full export of the regulatory compliance drive. This wasn't the scientific data that belonged to the university, technically. This was the record of my work as the PI, the Institutional Review Board approvals, the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee IACUC protocols, biosafety level certifications. These documents were legal affidavits signed by me, attesting that I was overseeing the safety and ethics of the research. If I wasn't the PI, I couldn't be responsible for them. And if I wasn't responsible for them, they were invalid. I copied everything to an encrypted external drive. As the progress bar crawled across the screen, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, my lab manager. Hargrave just toured the lab with Dr. Sterling. Sterling asked if we could consolidate the mouse colonies to save space. He wants to put the immunocompromised mice in the general population room. I stared at the screen. Putting immunocompromised mice in a general room would kill them within days. It would ruin 3 years of genetic breeding. It was scientifically illiterate. What did you tell him? I texted back. I told him that would kill the models. He told me that he's the incoming strategic director, and I should worry about cleaning cages. My hand shook, not from fear, from rage. They weren't just coming for me, they were coming for the work. They were going to dismantle a decade of progress because Sterling wanted to save space for his ego and Hargrave wanted to prove a point. The download finished. I pulled the drive. I knew what I had to do. Signing the PIP was an admission of guilt, was a collar around my neck. If I stayed, I would be micromanaged into insanity, and eventually fired anyway once they felt they had transferred enough of my knowledge to Sterling. I wasn't going to give them the time. I walked back to my office. I looked at the photos of my team. I looked at the whiteboard covered in molecular pathways. I was going to lose this battle. I knew that. But I was going to make sure that winning it cost Hargrave everything he valued. I sat down and typed a single email. Not to Hargrave, to the registrar's office. Please confirm my enrollment in Policy 601 for the remainder of the semester. I will not be withdrawing. Then I waited. The next morning, my badge didn't work on the parking garage reader. It flashed red. Access denied. I wasn't surprised. I reversed my car, parked in the visitor lot, paid the $25 daily rate, and walked to the building. The security guard at the front desk, a man named Earl who I'd baked cookies for every Christmas for 10 years, couldn't look me in the eye. They told me to send you straight to admin, Dr. Morneau, he mumbled, looking at his shoes. Sorry. It's okay, Earl, I said. You're doing your job. I took the elevator up to the dean's suite. The hallway felt longer than usual. The silence was heavy. Hargrave and Brenda were waiting. The door was already open. There was a cardboard box on the table. You didn't sign the PIP, Hargrave said. He sounded almost gleeful. No, I said. I didn't. Then you've left us no choice, he said, smoothing his tie. Effective immediately, your employment with the university is terminated for insubordination and failure to adhere to university policy regarding time allocation. Terminated, I said. The word hung in the air. It will allow you 15 minutes to collect personal effects from your office, Brenda said, reciting her lines. Security will escort you. You are not to access any computers. You are not to speak to staff. And the grant? I asked. The renewal meeting is in 4 months. We have it handled. Hargrave waved a hand dismissively. Dr. Sterling has graciously agreed to step in as interim PI. He's already reviewing your files. Sterling doesn't have the clearance for the BSL-3 lab, I noted. He's being fast-tracked, Hargrave snapped. Stop worrying about the university, Marisol. Worry about your unemployment hearing. We will be contesting it. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw a man who thought he was cutting out a tumor, unaware he was actually removing the heart. Can I have that in writing? I asked. The termination notice, specifically stating the reason is insubordination regarding the course. It's all in the packet, Brenda said, pushing a thick envelope toward me. I picked it up. It felt heavy. Goodbye, Dean. Goodbye, Marisol. I hope you learn some humility in your next role. I walked out. The security guard, a stranger this time, walked me to my office. I didn't pack much. My framed degree, a photo of my late husband, a cactus. I left the awards. I left the binders. I left the notes. As I walked through the lab for the last time, the room went silent. My students froze. Sarah stood up, tears in her eyes. I couldn't speak to them. The guard was watching. I just nodded, a sharp, single nod that meant keep going. Don't stop. They escorted me to the curb. I put the box in my passenger seat. I didn't go home to cry. I went to a coffee shop with secure Wi-Fi 2 towns over. I ordered a black tea. I opened my laptop. My personal one. I logged into ERA Commons, the federal portal. I navigated to the T32 and U54 grants. The dashboard glowed with the status, awarded. I clicked on the Change of Status tab. The NIH has very strict rules. A grant is awarded to an institution, yes, but it is awarded contingent on the specific competence of the named principal investigator. If that PI leaves, dies, or is removed, the institution must notify the NIH immediately. But Hargrave hadn't notified them. He probably planned to do it later or have Sterling just slide in quietly. I wasn't going to wait for him. I filled out the form. Reason for change, termination of employment. Effective date today. New PI, none. There is a checkbox at the bottom that says, I certify that I am no longer responsible for the oversight, fiscal management, and scientific integrity of this award. I clicked it. Then I went to the regulatory agencies, the IACUC portal, the IRB portal. I formally withdrew as the responsible official. In the eyes of the federal government, as of 10:42 a.m., the research program at my university was a ship without a captain. Legally, not a single mouse could be touched, not a single patient enrolled in a trial, not a single dollar drawn down from the account until a new PI was vetted and approved by the NIH. And the NIH vetting process takes months. Hargrave thought he had fired an employee. He didn't realize he had just triggered an automatic suspension of operations. I hit submit. The screen flashed green, update successful. I closed my laptop. I took a sip of my tea. It was still hot. Humility, I whispered to myself. We'll see who learns what. The first week of unemployment was strange. For 12 years, my adrenaline spiked at 6 o'clock a.m. Now I woke up, looked at the ceiling, and realized I had nowhere to be. I started gardening. I pruned my hydrangeas with the same precision I used to dissect tissue samples. My phone started ringing on day 3. It wasn't Hargrave. It was the compliance office. Dr. Morneau, this is Linda from Research Compliance. Just got an automated flag from the Animal Welfare Office. It says the protocols are suspended because the RO is inactive. Can you call me back? We can't feed the models until this is cleared. I didn't answer. I wasn't the RO responsible official anymore. That was Hargrave's problem. If he hadn't appointed a replacement before firing me, that was a violation of federal law. Day 4. An email to my personal account from the Grants Management Office. Marisol, the drawdown request for the payroll was rejected by the payment management system. It says key personnel void. We can't pay the postdocs. Please advise. I deleted the email. I wasn't an employee. I couldn't advise. Consulting requires a contract and I didn't have one. Day 6, a text from Sarah. It's chaos. Sterling tried to order reagents, but his signature isn't in the system. The vendors put our account on hold. Hargrave is screaming at it. He thinks it's a computer glitch. I smiled at that. A glitch. That's what they always think. They think the system works automatically. They don't see the thousands of hours of maintenance. They don't see the person holding the wires together during the storm. They remove the person and blame the wires. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my porch. I could imagine the scene. The glitch wasn't in the computer. The glitch was in the leadership. By the second week, the silence from the administration turned into panic. I received a certified letter via FedEx. It was from the university's general counsel. Dear Dr. Morneau, it has come to our attention that you have altered federal records regarding Grant U-54. You are hereby ordered to restore access and assist in the transition. I laughed out loud. Altered? I hadn't altered anything. I had reported a fact. I was no longer employed, therefore, was no longer the PI. I didn't reply to the letter. Instead, I forwarded it to my attorney, a shark of a woman named Jessica who specialized in academic labor law. She called me 10 minutes later. They're threatening you for complying with the law? She asked, sounding delighted. It appears so. Don't answer them, she said. Let them dig. If they want you to fix it, they have to hire you back. And if they hire you back, it's going to cost them triple. I don't want to go back. Jessica, good, she said. Then we watched them burn. I spent the next month quietly interviewing. I didn't apply to job postings. I reached out to my network. The world of high-level biomedical research is small. Word had gotten out that I was available. The rumors were wild. Some said I had embezzled money. Some said I had a nervous breakdown. But the people who mattered, the other serious scientists, they knew the truth. They knew Hargrave. They knew the score. I had a meeting with the dean of research at a rival university in Maryland. Why did you leave? He asked. Professional differences regarding compliance and resource allocation, I said. I heard Hargrave fired you over a lunch class, he said, raising an eyebrow. That was the stated reason. He shook his head. We have a policy here, Marisol. If you want to take a class, we pay for it, especially if it helps us get grants. That sounds logical, I said. We have an opening for department chair, he said. We need someone to clean up a mess. We need a mechanic. I smiled. I'm pretty good at fixing engines. But I come with a condition, which is I bring my own team once their contracts are liberated. He grinned. I think we can accommodate that. Back at my old university, the silence was breaking. The glitch hadn't been fixed. The renewal deadline was looming, and the NIH program officer had just scheduled the site visit. Hargrave had appointed Sterling as the interim PI in the university system, but he hadn't gotten the NIH approval yet. He assumed it was a rubber stamp. He was about to find out that the NIH doesn't use rubber stamps. They use microscopes, 2 months post-termination. The university was bleeding, but they were trying to hide the wound with Band-Aids. Sarah kept me updated through encrypted messaging apps. Sterling told us to just keep working despite the protocol suspension, she texted. He said he'd backdate the paperwork once the NIH approves him. I stared at the phone. Backdating federal compliance paperwork is a felony. It's fraud. Sterling wasn't just incompetent, he was dangerous. Don't do it, Sarah, I replied. Document that instruction. Do not sign anything. I'm not. But the postdocs are scared. They need the data for their papers. The tragedy of academia is that the most vulnerable people are the ones who get crushed by the egos at the top. Meanwhile, the university was preparing for the $150 million grant renewal site visit. This is a theatrical event. The NIH flies in a team of experts, peer reviewers, program officers, budget analysts. They tour the labs, they interview the staff, they look at the books. Hargrave was in full PR mode. He was boasting to the faculty senate that the transition was seamless. He claimed that under Sterling's leadership, the department was streamlining operations. Streamlining meant that 3 of my specialized technicians had quit because Sterling yelled at them for using too many gloves. Then came the issue of the rats. We had a colony of transgenic rats, extremely expensive, genetically modified animals that modeled human hypertension. It required a specific diet and a specific humidity level. I used to check the humidity logs every morning. Sterling didn't know how to access the building automation system. One Tuesday, the AC system in the animal facility drifted. The humidity dropped to 10%. Rats regulate their heat through their tails. In low humidity, they get ringtail, a painful condition where the tail constricts and can fall off. The vet staff flagged it. They called Sterling. Sterling was on the golf course. He didn't answer. By the time he came in the next day, the vet had reported the incident to OLA, Office of Laboratory Animal Welfare. This is a mandatory reportable event. It goes on the permanent record. When you are applying for $150 million grant, having an active animal welfare investigation is like showing up to a job interview with blood on your shirt. Hargrave tried to spin it. He blamed the facility's staff. He blamed the aging infrastructure. He didn't mention that I had a pending work order to upgrade the humidity sensors that he had canceled to save money. I sat in my new living room, reviewing the offer letter from the Maryland University. It was generous, tenure, a startup package for my lab, full autonomy, but I couldn't sign it yet. I needed to see this through. I needed to see the moment the truth hit them. The date of the site visit arrived. I knew the schedule because I had written the original draft of it 6 months ago. 9 o'clock a.m., welcome breakfast. 10 o'clock a.m., leadership overview. 11 o'clock a.m., compliance review. The compliance review, that was the kill zone. I wasn't there, obviously, but I knew who was leading the NIH team. Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans was a former military surgeon. He didn't like charm. He didn't like slideshows. He liked paperwork. He liked rules. I imagined the scene. Hargrave in his best suit, Sterling sweating in his vest. Dr. Evans opening the binder. I poured a cup of coffee. The clock on the wall read 10:55 a.m. Showtime, I whispered. I wasn't in the room, but I can tell you exactly what happened. I know because Dr. Evans sent me an email 3 days later, and because Sarah was in the back of the room, taking notes like a war correspondent. The conference room was set up with pastries that cost more than a grad student's weekly stipend. Hargrave sat at the head of the table, flanked by Sterling and the provost. Dr. Evans walked in. He didn't touch the pastries. He placed a single, thick file on the table. "Good morning," Evans said. His voice was dry like old paper. "Let's skip the presentation. I've read the application." Hargrave's smile faltered. "Of course. Just wanted to highlight the new strategic direction." "The application lists Dr. Marisol Morneau as the principal investigator," Evans said, opening the file. "I don't see Dr. Morneau." "Ah, yes," Hargrave said, leaning back, projecting confidence. "We have had a leadership transition. Dr. Morneau is no longer with the university. We have appointed Dr. Sterling as the interim PI. He is fully up to speed." Evans didn't look at Sterling. He looked at the paper in front of him. "I checked the ERA Commons this morning," Evans said. "Dr. Sterling is not listed as the PI on the award. It's pending approval," Hargrave said quickly. "Just a formality." "It's not a formality," Dean Hargrave, Evans said. "It is a legal requirement. Without an approved PI, this grant is currently in a non-compliant state. We submitted the paperwork," Sterling piped up. Evans turned to him. "When? 2 months ago." Sterling lied. Evans pulled a sheet from his file. "I have a change of status notification from Dr. Morneau dated 2 months ago, removing herself from the award. I have nothing from the university nominating you until last week." The room went cold. Hargrave glared at Brenda. Brenda looked at her shoes. They had forgotten. In their arrogance, they assumed they could just swap names in the slide deck and the government wouldn't notice. Furthermore, Evans continued, flipping a page. "Since there was no active PI for 2 months who has been overseeing the human subjects research?" "I have," Sterling said. "But you aren't the PI," Evans said, "and you aren't listed on the IRB protocols, which means any patient data collected in the last 60 days was collected without authorized oversight." "That's a technicality," Hargrave said, his voice rising. "It's a violation of the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 45. Evans said sharply. He closed the binder. "Gentlemen, I cannot renew a grant for a program that is currently operating illegally." "Now wait a minute," Hargrave stood up. "This is a $150 million center. You can't just shut it down because of paperwork." "I'm not shutting it down because of paperwork," Evans said, standing up as well. "I'm shutting it down because you fired the only person who knew how to run it. You were too arrogant to realize she took the keys with her." "We can fix this," the provost interrupted, looking pale. "We can get Marisol back." Evans paused. He looked at Hargrave. Then he looked at the empty chair where I should have been. "I suspect," Evans said, "that ship has sailed. And frankly, based on what I've seen of your strategic direction, I wouldn't blame her." He picked up his file. "The renewal is denied. You will receive the formal notice of termination of funding within 48 hours. I suggest you start preparing your close-out reports. You have 30 days to shut down the labs." He walked out. "Sarah texted me at 11:15 a.m. He denied it. It's over." Hargrave is screaming. "The provost looks like he's having a stroke." I sat on my porch. A bird landed on the feeder I had just filled. It chirped, a happy, oblivious sound. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt the specific, cold satisfaction of an equation balancing out. Force equals mass times acceleration. Stupidity equals arrogance times consequence. The collapse was fast. It wasn't a slow decline, it was a cliff drop. The notice of award, termination arrived via email the next day. It was CC'd to the university president. $150 million. Gone. Overhead costs, the money the university keeps for lights and administration, gone. Salary support for 45 faculty members, gone. The provost suspended Hargrave pending an internal investigation. It was a nice gesture, but it was like putting a Band-Aid on a decapitation. The real tragedy wasn't in the administrative offices. It was in the labs. Because the funding was pulled immediately, the animal colonies had to be reduced. That's the polite euphemism. I drove to the campus that Friday. I couldn't go inside, but I met Sarah in the parking lot. She was crying. They made us euthanize the hypertension line, she sobbed. 6 years of breeding, gone in an hour. Sterling didn't even watch. He sent the vet text to do it. I held her. I felt a deep, burning sorrow for the waste of it all. Not for the money, for the knowledge, for the potential cures that were now just ash in an incinerator because a man in a suit felt threatened by a woman with a plan. I'm sorry, Sarah, I said. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, she said, wiping her face. You protected us as long as you could. Pack your things, I told her. And tell the postdocs to pack theirs. Don't sign any severance agreements. Why? Because you're not staying unemployed, I said. I signed the offer with Maryland this morning. I'm the new chair of the Department of Molecular Medicine, and I have 5 open lines for technical staff and budget for 3 postdocs. Her eyes widened. You're taking us? I'm taking the talent, I said. Hargrave can keep the furniture. The fallout continued for weeks. The local news picked up the story. Major research grant lost due to compliance failures. They didn't mention the lunch class. They mentioned administrative mismanagement. Hargrave tried to spin it one last time. He gave an interview saying that regulatory burdens were stifling innovation. Dr. Evans, bless his heart, gave a quote to the Washington Post. The NIH supports innovation. We do not support negligence. The failure at this university was a failure of leadership, plain and simple. Hargrave was quietly asked to resign. He retired to spend time with his family. I'm sure his family was thrilled. Sterling was demoted back to assistant professor. His consulting firm was investigated for conflict of interest. Turns out he was using university data to pitch to investors. He was fired 6 months later, but the damage was done. The center was hollowed out. The hallways where we had made discoveries were dark. The freezers were unplugged, their doors left open to prevent mold. The hum was gone. It was a graveyard. I sat in my new office in Maryland. It was bigger. The window looked out over a grove of trees. My phone rang. It was the provost from my old university. Marisol, he said. His voice was tired. We made a mistake. Yes, I said. You did. We'd like to discuss bringing you back. We can offer you the chair position. We can try to reapply for the grant. The grant is gone, George, I said. It went to a consortium in Boston. You can't reapply for dead cycle. We can rebuild, he pleaded. We need you. You had me. Said I was there. I was doing the work. I was taking a class to do the work better. And you fired me for it. That was Hargrave. He's gone. Hargrave was the symptom, George. The culture that let him do it is the disease. You watched him. You sat in the meetings. You let him erase me. Marisol, please, I have work to do, I said. My team is waiting. Goodbye, George. I hung up 6 months later. My new lab is up and running. The hum is back. The freezers are cycling. Centrifuges are spinning. Sarah is the lab manager here. She got a 20% raise. The postdocs are happier. The culture here is different. They respect the work. I still take my lunch hour. I finished Policy 601. I got an A. I'm now enrolled in a course on executive leadership in science. My new dean saw it on my calendar. He didn't call HR. He sent me a book recommendation. I heard from a friend back at the old place. The building is half empty. They're renting out the lab space to a cosmetic testing company to make ends meet. The Center for Excellence is now testing anti-aging cream on beagles. It's tragic, but it's not my tragedy. Sometimes, I think about Hargrave. I wonder if he understands what happened. I wonder if he realizes that he didn't lose $150 million because of a rule. Lost it because he couldn't stand the idea of a woman knowing more than him about how his own car worked. He thought I was insubordinate. I wasn't insubordinate. I was indispensable, and he was too stupid to know the difference. There's a saying in mechanics, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there's a corollary that people forget. If you break it on purpose, don't expect the person you fired to come back and glue it together. I walked out of my office and down the hall. The students waved. The data was flowing. The NIH had just invited me to sit on a high-level advisory council for future funding. I checked my phone, a text from an unknown number. Hope you're happy. I looked at it. I didn't block the number. I wanted him to be able to reach me, just so he could know I was reading it and choosing not to reply. I typed a reply in my head, the one I'd never send. I'm not happy, Hargrave. Happiness is fleeting. I'm effective, and that lasts longer. I deleted the draft. I put the phone in my pocket. I walked into the lab, put on my gloves, and got back to work. We have a grant to write. And this time, nobody is going to stand in my way. Real power doesn't always announce itself with a title. It resides in competence and indispensable knowledge. Marisol quietly let their arrogance unravel an entire program. Underestimating someone's true value often costs far more than any perceived slight. Never forget that. Appreciate you all for sticking through this one. See you in the next story.